This is The Conversation, and I'm Jonathan Larsen from TYT Investigates. And with progressives right now fighting to ensure that Democrats step up and provide needed coronavirus relief for millions of Americans facing hunger, facing eviction, I wanted to talk to Chuck Rocha, who was the senior advisor to the 2020 Sanders campaign, the presidential campaign, the author of T.O. Bernie, the inside story of how Bernie Sanders brought Latinos into the political revolution, and is the president of both the Nuestro Political Action Committee, as well as his own political consulting firm, Solidarity Strategies. And I wanted to talk to you, Chuck, about both where the Democrats are today, the fight over COVID relief, and where they're gonna be next year. So Chuck, thanks for joining us.
Jonathan, thanks for having me. I think that it's a unique time, in the Congress when you see everybody fighting on trying to get as much relief as we can. I think there's a common theme that amongst progressives, moderates, and some Republicans that something needs to be done, something has to be done. I think there's a lot of people really hurting and struggling. I just really think that the Republicans now are all of a sudden going to become fiscal hawks, which they weren't when we were giving tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires with tax cuts. But now that poor working class Americans could really use some relief after a year-long COVID struggle, it's almost depressing to watch this debate take place.
Well, interestingly, it's interesting that you mentioned that sort of ideological range, right? We're seeing even some Republicans step up and going publicly, saying the danger is not going too big. The danger is going too small. But it doesn't seem quite like all the Democratic leadership is on board with that, right? First, we had the $2,000 check became $1,400 based on the idea that, well, $600 already went out the door, and now there's other conversations going on around means testing and questions about what other aid might look like as well. So where in your view is the White House on this, and where's the Democratic leadership, would you say?
Well, I think two people to keep your eye on is obviously the president, who said everybody's going to get $1,400. It's just who's going to get $1,400. Where do they put the cap on who is eligible for $1,400? And I think that our good friend, my former boss, Senator Bernie Sanders, is a chairman, I love saying that, of the Senate Budgetary Committee. And he's like, look, it's going to be $1,400, and I'm going to try to get as many people the $1,400 as they can. And I think they're going to try to get together, as you said, and pass the largest bill that they can. Now, will there be alternative voices? Will there be people saying that it's got to be less than $1.9 trillion? Yes, there will be. But I think with you watching the budget reconciliation bill, knowing now that they've only got to have 50 votes plus one, which would be the vice president, they're going to have as robust a package as possible. And there's one thing that Democrats, I hope, have learned a lesson of, and that's the first term of Barack Obama, when we controlled all three levers of government and kind of wasted that power and thought that we could get Republicans to go along with us, and at the end didn't get that much accomplished. I think Democrats have now learned better.
And do you think that calculus holds true on the minimum wage as well? We're seeing, if I remember correctly, Joe Manchin was not happy about $15 minimum wage being included in this sort of overall package. If Democrats have learned their lesson, how are they going to deal with Manchin, and how did they learn that lesson?
Well, there's one thing that's really encouraging, and I've been saying this to progressives and making them angry all week, as we talk about trying to hold Joe Biden accountable and making sure he's as progressive as he needs to be, and talking about Joe Manchin being a problem. Well, as soon as he rolled this thing out, he sent Kamala Harris up to West Virginia to start having interviews in West Virginia and made Joe Manchin mad. Now, people are like, why would you want to make him mad? I'm like, well, you were just hollering last week about how we keep him accountable. You keep him accountable by using the bully pulpit, just like Donald Trump did, and showing up in West Virginia going, there's a lot of folks here in West Virginia that could use a $1,400 check and could use $15 minimum wage. That's how you pressure Joe Manchin. And as long as Bernie Sanders is the chairman of the Budget Committee in the Senate, you're going to see $15 minimum wage stay there. The only way I can see them backing away from that is them instituting it over a longer period of time, where there's more of a gradual rolling in of that, which I think will then eventually get all of these centrist Democrats on board.
So you think that if people weren't aware of this, right? Kamala Harris had this appearance on West Virginian television, right? The vice president, and essentially blindsided Manchin, and he griped about that publicly. And the perception I got just reading it in the trades was that this was a misstep by the White House. You're suggesting, and I don't know how informed you are or not, I'd be curious to hear, but you're suggesting this wasn't a misstep, this was a conscious shot across the bow.
Yes, I can almost guarantee you that it was. And I do not work for Joe Biden. I do not work at the White House, but I've been doing campaigns for 31 years. And if you need one senator who's got a lot of poor white people in his state to be on board with you, and the first interview you do is with the largest West Virginia TV outlet, that was very purposeful. And progressives should take that as something that's a positive if he ain't scared to do that with his first action out of the bat.
Is the calculation there that Manchin is not willing to be the one Democrat who has fingers pointed at him for sinking a relief bill? Is that the raw political calculation here?
It is, and it's one of the few things that I think you actually have leverage on him on, which is the economy, which is COVID relief money, which is minimum wage, with a state that's ultra poor, low in education. They need money. They have a lot of federal assistance. You ain't gonna get Joe Manchin to meet you halfway on a cap and trade bill or anything around the environment, anything around gun rights, anything around good old redneck values in West Virginia. But on $15 minimum wage, or saying you ain't gonna get $1,400, he don't wanna be between you and your money, even though he's not up for re-election, I would remind everybody, till 2024.
Right. So the one question I do have in terms of what Democratic voters want, right? Because that's part of your job, right, is to know that. So are Democratic voters, were they last year saying, you know what, if I just got $2,000, then I don't have to worry about being evicted anymore. I don't have to worry about feeding my family. I don't have to worry about paying my bills. Were they saying to give me $2,000, or were they saying make sure that my basics are met, period? In other words, are Democrats still even lowballing compared to where voters wanted them to be and what voters will reward them for or punish them for in 2022, 2024?
Let's be clear, voters are never going to be satisfied with whatever you give them because it's their tax dollars. They want to get the maximum that they can. And when you see our government fight for 6 months to see if we might give them $600, then you start seeing things like the results in the Georgia Senate elections, which were astronomical for a state like Georgia, which I mean by a state like Georgia being a Republican state. So the electorate for the last 4-6 years have been really, really aggravated, so much so that they would vote for a orange carnival barker to be their president. Like, that's how crazy the electorate is, right? From jumping from Barack Obama to Donald Trump. So there's a lot of anxiety. Then when you add in COVID and you have it killing brown and black people at 3 times the rate as white people, and poor people, no matter what the color of your skin, not being able to make rent, there's just a lot of an undertow of anxiety, them thinking Democrats or Republicans really don't care about us.
So you think it sounds like you're saying that the Biden administration is calculating not only do we need to come through in a big visible way, but there's real political advantage to doing it fast, regardless of whether there are complaints about bipartisanship, so that voters see, oh wow, bam, Biden came in, wham, this happened. Am I reading that right?
Oh my God, you hit it right on the nail. That's why he said it's not worried about it being too big, but too small. And he's saying, I'm going to push this through, even if I don't have one single Republican, because he's got to get something done. He's got to get it done quickly. And he's got to show the American people there's a new sheriff in town and there's going to be law and order. And we're going to do exactly what we can do. And I'm going to fight like you know what every single day to get you as much relief as I can. That's how he knows he can have any chance of winning midterm elections in 2022.
I want to bounce this phrase off of you that I keep hearing. I've heard it from the White House. I hear it from other Democrats. They say the Democratic plan is designed to help people who've lost their jobs through no fault of their own. And to me, what I keep hearing there is, so we're not going to help someone because some middle manager decided they didn't do a good job, or maybe even they genuinely screwed up. To me, you know what I mean? Like, are Democrats really saying if you put the widget in the wrong thingamajig, you don't deserve to get relief? Why add that language in there?
Because there's some woke white consultant who says that's what you should be putting in there so we don't offend anybody. That's exactly why our system has been broken since day one, and why I haven't been put out of business in 31 years, because a lot of times I'll tell them how the cow eats the corn. People just want some help. They want relief. There's a small group of people that are Democrats, another small group that are Republicans, and most folks just want to know what you, Mr. Politician or Mrs. Politician, are going to do to make my life better.
Real quickly before we go, talking about the people who gravitated towards Trump, we saw he did surprisingly well with the Latino community, and given that that's more than one community, right? We're talking about multiple communities in there. What happened there, and what do Democrats need to do?
Joe Biden won the Latino vote and did really well in most of the states, but did Donald Trump overperform in a place like Miami-Dade? Oh my gosh, by 22 points, because he spent time and money going and talking to Cubans early and often and built a real program. And in the Valley of Texas, where there are Democrats there and Joe Biden won them, he underperformed there as well because there wasn't a competitive alternative narrative. So when you're talking this machismo thing to Latinos who ain't hearing a message from anybody else who wear cowboy hat and belt buckles like me, you can get 4 or 5 people over on your side.
Chuck Rocha, if people want to find your book, they can check you out online at toberniebook.com. Thanks so much for joining us, Chuck.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.